welcome. And who are you?
Keith Van Inwegen.
Okay. Um, do you have a middle name?
Yes, Powell.
Powell, really?
It's my mother's maiden name.
Okay, all right. What was your ride you did today?
I commuted to work and back.
Okay. About how far is your commute?
It is, if I go straight, it's less than 2 miles, but I always try to make it a little bit more. So today I think I made it 5 on the way in and about 7 on the way home.
How do you feel in the days when you don't commute in? Is it just it feels like a wash because you ride so much, or like is there a difference?
It depends on the reason why I didn't commute in.
Okay.
In the wintertime, it's sometimes it's not worth the trouble of gearing up with all the cold weather gear, and it's easier for me to just walk to work. But in nice weather, if it's nice weather and I don't ride to work, there's usually some reason why I need to drive, or why I need to go someplace in the middle of work and I need a car at the office. But typically, if it's in the warm weather, I will ride to work every day.
Okay, all right. We'll ask you more about commuting as we go on. But how did you get into bike riding?
So as an adult, I mean, as a kid, I had a bike, 3-speed, the banana seat, all that stuff. And then as a teenager, I ended up with a 10-speed. This is probably in the late 70s. And the shop in our town had what they just called a French racing bike, and it was a Peugeot. And bought that and loved that. And but once I turned 16, got a driver's license, and that was the last time I rode a bike until I was in my late 20s.
Yeah.
And at that point, my wife bought me a used mountain bike from Play It Again Sports.
Okay.
We had a couple of young kids at the time, and I bought one of those trailers for the kids to ride in, and I'd ride them to the playground, and did that for several years.
Okay.
And then as the kids got too big for the trailer, I would just take that mountain bike out and ride it down the road a couple miles every morning before work, in the warm weather only.
Okay.
And then eventually stepped that up to buying a road bike.
Okay.
And then rode that just occasionally, weekends, in the nice weather, maybe 10, 15 miles on a Saturday. And then at some point I just decided to kick it up a notch, and here we are today.
So you had the mountain bike, you're doing, small rides. What was the thought, if any, about to go to getting a, because you're like an irregular rider, but you decide to get a road bike? Like where's the thought there?
Well, I followed professional cycling from afar. And so, in the 80s, I would read Sports Illustrated, and I read about Greg LeMond winning the Tour de France, and I would, follow the tour in the sports pages in the U.S., which meant you would see a list of who was in first place and second place.
That's right.
And that was about all you could find.
I remember that.
And then, in through the 90s, I would do the same, and Miguel Indurain winning the tour, and I would, just follow it in the paper, Sports Illustrated, that's about it. And, when Lance Armstrong started winning the tour, all of a sudden it was on TV, where you could really see it. And I started watching the tour every year, and just decided I wanted to get a road bike.
Okay.
And so I bought not a cheap road bike, but sort of a mid-range road bike, a Le Mans aluminum, and but still didn't ride it that much. I mean, I'd ride it, 10 or 15 Saturday afternoons a year, just 7, 8 miles downtown, turn around, come back, 15 miles maybe, and then. But I always thought, like, someday I would ride a Century. But I wasn't doing anything to actually get myself there. I was just, riding whenever there was time. And just one day I was in a meeting, and this woman in the meeting had a broken wrist, and she was complaining that she was going to miss the Cap to Cap that year. And I asked her about it. I said, I've heard of this thing. Tell me a little bit about it. And she told me. I said, well, that sounds like fun, but I don't know if I can ride 50 miles. And I signed up that night, and it was about 5 weeks out from it, and I just started riding every morning and stepping up the mileage on the weekends, and still had never done more than 30, and then did the cap to cap 50, and felt like my legs were going to fall off at the end of it.
Did you know anybody else who rode at that time?
No.
Okay. So
no, I'd never ridden in a group.
Okay.
I'd always just ridden by myself, and I'd see other people, but not that many. I'd see just a couple of people here and there, and I knew of a few people who rode, but didn't know much about how they rode or where they rode, and just that cap to cap was 2011, the cap to cap, and just being in a big group going down Osborne Turnpike, I was like, wow, this is fun.
Yeah. Okay.
But 12 miles in, the first rest stop, I felt like I was going to die. I had to stop and refuel, and then at the halfway point, I was like, how the hell am I ever going to get home? Because I was just dead. Yeah. But managed to make it, and at that point, I'd caught the bug.
So in you this stepping back. So when you got your road bike and you're riding around, a bit, were you just like in street clothes, or had you gone to like getting?
I had a pair of bike shorts and then just t-shirts and sneakers and socks and just flat pedals and. But right before I went to ride the cap to cap, I did get a pair of mountain bike pedals and shoes and a cheap jersey, and clipping in just felt different, and it seemed to make the ride, I don't know, I enjoyed it more. Okay. And you didn't get so wait, when you did you practice clipping in? Did you know enough to practice, or like day of the event you then got the? No, I rode clipped in for about 3 weeks before the event. And I fell once or twice. I mean, everybody does. That's that sort of emphasizes on why you should learn how to clip in or not. Is you fall once or twice, and then all of a sudden you think, hey, I got to really think about this. But no, I did not fall at the cap to cap, even though. When they started at the mass start, there were several people who clipped in and just went right over, and so that was a little nerve-wracking to not go down in that. But
so you do this cap to cap and survive being clipped in in a group, and so then your interest is piqued more. So what's the next move? Do you find some groups? You find what was next?
Well, I found Rabba.
Okay.
I found Rabba and started going out to the East End on Saturdays, and I was doing, I think might have been a precursor to the Portobello ride, but it was I can't remember what it was called, and started doing the ABC ride in the morning on Saturday mornings, and just started to build up my tolerance for riding 30, 40 miles at a time. At that time it was still like got to ride up to Ashland, because I got a rest in Ashland, because it's 22 miles or whatever to go up there, and then just slowly started meeting people and finding a group that rode at about my pace, and it just kept going from there.
It just kept escalating.
And then the following year, my goal was to ride the Century for the cap to cap, which I did. Okay. And that was definitely hard, but
did you, despite it being hard, was there some kind of plan to get prepared for that, or were you just riding frequently enough that you felt that was prepared?
Well, the thought was I needed to step up the mileage from 50, and so I had signed up for an event in the summertime after I did the cap to cap 50. It was a fundraiser for the Children's Hospital. It's called the Tour de Lions. Okay. I don't think it is around anymore. It was only for a couple years, and it was out of it started up in Ashland, out of a shopping center in Ashland, and there was a 100, which I didn't sign up for, and a 75 and a 50, and I signed up for the 50, and get out there, and I'm in a group, and we're, 15, 20 people, and we're all going about the same pace, and I'm like, this is great. We get to an intersection, there's a sign that says 50 to the left, 75 to the right. I'm thinking I'm going left. That whole group turns to the right, and so I turned with them. And I was like, well, I guess I'm doing 75 today. And, and then, of course, the last 10 miles I was dead, and I was dropped, and I was, hurting, and made it back. But, okay, so I've got 75 in my legs. And then starting in the spring, I just tried to make sure I had done like a 60 or a 70 mile prior to doing the cap to cap.
Okay. Okay. So you clearly up the mileage, and yeah, definitely not the first person who's like, oh, the group's going to do longer. I'll go do longer as well.
It's not the first, and it won't be the last time that I've been lured by the group into doing something I didn't want to do on a bike.
Did you end up riding more with any of those people? Did any of those people that you like, you didn't know them then, but like now that you actually ride with them, like the people you were riding with? Like,
I don't know who any of those people were.
Okay.
And maybe.
Okay.
The first century I did the cap to cap.
Yeah.
It was Jan Waldron's first century.
Oh, really?
And
Okay.
I've ridden a million times with
Yeah.
Jan since then, but we didn't know each other then. And
Right.
I certainly don't remember if we were anywhere near each other on the road.
Mm-hmm.
But so
Okay.
yeah, some of that is such a blur because it was got about 11 years ago.
Right. Yeah.
Just,
all those
hard to remember.
rides. Yeah. Yeah. I find that because because I know, like, I was talking to someone, I interviewed someone, and they talked about they doing their first century was the Between the Waters ride, the same year that I've done my first century kind of thing, and I've ridden with them a bunch of times now. So just thought I'd ask.
And you're doing your first century. The last thing you're doing is starting to look around at people. You're just so focused on, oh my
Right.
God,
Stay alive.
how many more miles to a rest stop, and for some reason I had a very primitive Bontrager bike computer.
Mm-hmm.
And the morning of the ride, for some reason, when I turned it on, it was in kilometers.
Oh.
So I was constantly just doing
Math.
kilometers to miles, math in my head the whole way. And which kept me something to focus on and obsess about. And as always, even today, usually when you're doing a century at about mile 80, everything starts to hurt, and so.
It's about the time, yeah. So you do this do this 100-mile ride. You finally get to the point you do the 100-mile ride for cap to cap. Is the thought, while this was difficult, I'd like to do this again, or like this?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
What other ones can I sign up for?
Okay. All right.
Sure.
Okay. So you're motivated by the distance. Are you? But are you riding with regular groups by this point in time, or are you just kind of riding and showing up at the
sort of showing up at rides, showing
Okay.
up at the ABC ride and riding with Andrew Mann and Ken Kolb and Gene Minix and folks like that, and then slowly just end up migrating over to another section of the parking lot, and there's a couple other guys and Jeff Nicholas and those folks and Henry Smith and just start riding with them and then I'm a believer of you just start to ride to the level of the people that you're with after a while, and so I started riding with them. That group has evolved over the years, but for the most part, a lot of the same people are still riding together. Yeah.
Okay. You had a Bontrager
Bontrager,
bike computer.
It's the Trek in-house brand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you still using
no,
it?
that thing was awful.
Okay.
No, I've got a Wahoo now.
Okay.
I went to a Garmin, and then after that, Garmin's just seemed overly complicated for me, and I got a Wahoo, and I love it.
Okay. All right. Were you doing sports beforehand? Was there any kind of sports you were doing regularly in some kind of regularity before all the cycling happened, or did you go from couch potato to cyclist?
No. I was always active. I did in high school. I played golf.
Okay.
I was on the golf team, and we played. I grew up in upstate New York. We played hockey on the ponds all winter long.
Okay.
And in college, I played club hockey.
Okay.
And we played intramural flag football and stuff like that. And then after moving to Richmond, I would in the late '80s, early '90s. Joined a gym, and I would play racquetball occasionally, which was the quintessential early '90s thing to do, was play racquetball. And then I would play a little bit of pickup hockey out at the ice rink out in Short Pump, and golf whenever I had a chance. But once the cycling bug took over, I really haven't played any golf. I mean, I probably haven't touched a club in 3 or 4 years.
I guess you don't miss it enough. Yeah.
Not really.
Okay.
Not really. I find that the cycling is more rewarding, more enjoyable. I get more out of it physically. Mm-hmm. You can do it with a bigger group of people. With golf, you're sort of limited to a foursome. and there's a lot of time on a golf course of doing nothing,
Yeah.
walking to your ball, driving to your ball, standing around watching somebody else hit. When we're on a group ride, if we go on a big long Saturday ride, it might take the same amount of time. It might be a 5 or 6 hour ride versus a 5 or 6 hour round of golf.
Yeah.
But there's very little standing around doing nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You're always doing something. Your mind is always engaged, and your body is definitely always engaged.
How old were you when you? Pardon me. How old were you roughly when you started doing you did your first century? 2011 or so. No,
I was 45.
45. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a little later in the game.
Sure.
And that's fine. So you start picking up this riding. Did you notice any difference? Did you feel any difference from like riding this frequently? Were you going up steps faster? Like were you like? It's a lot of activity to pick up. Did you feel any kind of difference?
I mean, my blood pressure is lower. I mean, all the measurables at an annual physical are better than they were before I started riding. My blood pressure is lower. I have a little bit of family history towards high blood pressure.
Okay.
And I was not there yet, but I was on the road to it.
Sure.
And so that's lower. I mean, my rest and pulse rate is lower.
Mm-hmm.
My weight is down. My cholesterol levels are better. I mean, there's
been some health benefits.
I'm enjoying the health benefits of cycling.
Well, good. I wanted to make sure that there was a moment that you like, things seem to be a little bit healthier.
Oh yeah, okay. and I feel great. When I ride, I feel great that day. Just getting in from a ride, and the rest of the day, you just feel like you've got more energy.
Okay. So you're doing all this road biking. At this point you've picked up a lot. 2012, 2013, you're riding a lot with the groups. When you start doing because you've done some big rides.
Sure.
You've done some big dumb rides.
A lot of big dumb rides.
When did it go from I'm just gonna when did you start thinking I want to do more challenging events, like not just the local charity events, like I want to do these big big challenging events kind of thing?
So 2014,
okay,
3 years into really getting into cycling, I signed up for Mountains of Misery, which I had heard about. And again, so I went to Virginia Tech. My wife and I met there, and always wanted to I heard about this event and thought, well, it's in Blacksburg. I know I've been to Mountain Lake several times, and I've driven up the road to get there. Wow, this seems like quite a challenge. Little did I find out that the road that I knew riding up to Mountain Lake was not the road that the event went up. It went up the harder one, and I was like, oh, there's a harder one. I didn't even know there was a different route, and so trained for that and just obsessed over that. And it's hard to train for those kind of hills around Richmond. So you can only go up Old Gun Road so many times before you're like, this is not that hard. You can only go do the Three Sisters so many times before you realize that's only just literally a bump in the road compared to these mountains. But so that year I signed up for, along with a bunch of other guys who I still ride with today, like Jan and Ken Ashworth and so forth. We decided to do the weekend before Mountains of Misery was the Storming of Thunder Ridge in Lynchburg, which is one of my favorite events. What a great event. And then the day before that Saturday, is the Tour de Madison, which is about a 65-mile hilly ride, but not painfully hilly. So we did Madison, drove down to Lynchburg, spent the night, did Thunder Ridge on a Sunday, came home. Saturday, Mountains of Misery. And so in 8 days, I did those 3 events. That was hard.
It's a lot.
But again, the feeling of accomplishment when you get to the top, is incredible. I mean, when you come around that last corner and you see the finish line and you hear the music and everything, it's exhilarating. And it makes you want to do that thing over and over again. I know that event doesn't happen anymore, but I ended up doing it twice.
So that year you did Stormy of Thunder Ridge. That was your first year of doing that?
Yes.
Okay. First year of Stormy and Mountains of Misery.
Yes. Back to back.
That's going hard, man.
That is.
Yeah, because did you did you do the 75, the 100? Or
75.
75, okay.
Yeah, I've never done the 100 at Storm and Thunder Ridge, and I don't think I ever will. The 75 is a great ride, and why spoil it with 25 more miles of
lumpy
incessant rollers that don't offer you anything but just more pain.
Yeah,
the 75 is great. I love the 75.
Yeah, the 100 doesn't the extra bit doesn't provide any extra scenic views or anything like that. You're right. It is just rollers in likely very hot terrain. Okay, so that's definitely you doing big monster events in a short time frame. Did you rest after that? Did you put the bike down? Were you like, I need to take a day or two off after that, or did you just
take a day off?
rest?
To drive back, but then the next day you just want to go out and just do a recovery ride and just ride 10, 15 miles, just spin the legs out and just keep from cramping up.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did not have anything big on the calendar for a while after that.
Okay. Okay. Have you done any overnight rides?
I have not done any overnight rides. I have.
Okay.
The only riding in the dark that I've done has been in the wintertime commuting home from work, which is not a big deal because the city's well lit, and some nighttime mountain bike rides, which are a lot of fun.
Okay.
But I have not ridden overnight.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Not yet, at least.
Okay. You have any desire to do so?
Well, there is this Cap Trail 200K, I think, that Outpost is going to do later this summer.
Nocturna, yeah.
Yeah, where they start at like 7 or 8 o'clock in the evening and ride down to Jamestown and back. That I'm intrigued. If I can figure out the lights.
Yeah.
And have enough lights to last me, 5 or 6 hours, then I may do that.
A dynamo hub. I'm pretty sure most of those folks are either using a dynamo hub or they've got like a supplemental battery hooked into the lights. I'm also interested in a ride considering the terrain.
I might just get 2 lights. Wait till one goes out and put the other one on.
I carry a battery pack, man. I don't think many lights are anyway. It's a ride to potentially do at some point in time. Did you do the? Have you done some of the Outpost rides? I've done
South
Hill
one or two.
ride.
I did 1 or 2 of them. Yeah.
Okay. So you've done events, and we'll get back on track with our time frame. You've done events, you've done group rides. Is there a preference of riding you like to do? Do you like the weekly group rides more, or do you find you like you want to do the events more?
I kind of like them all.
Okay.
I don't do that many events every year.
Okay.
Partly because I just don't want to spend every weekend in the car driving around the state. So
yeah.
I might only do 3 or 4 events in a year.
Mm-hmm.
And this year Monster Cross out at Pocahontas in February. That's an easy one.
Mm-hmm.
It's right here. And then this year a few of us went down to North Carolina to do the Croatan Buck 50.
Okay.
Which we thought we were all going to do the 150-mile version, but we realized we probably would have bitten off more than we could chew, so we all did the 100. Okay. Which was plenty hard enough. Yeah. Because it's all gravel. It's flat, but it's 2 miles of it were mud, and we had to go through that 4 times. There was a cornfield we had to go through 4 times. There was a little bit of single track we had to go through. So it's flat, but it's not easy. Okay. And 100 miles of that was plenty. Would you do that again? Yeah, I'd do that again. I would do the 100 again. If I were to do the 150, it would take a lot of training because it's probably a 12-hour ride at least to do the 150. And it's laps. Sounds like it's laps. It's an out and back that you do twice. Oh, okay. To do the 100, and then they have a little bit added on the end of each lap to make the 150. Okay. Now Jessica Conley did the 150. I think she said it was brutal. She killed it. Yeah. Okay. But I could not have finished that. That's a lot. I mean, any distance on gravel seems like a lot. So you're doing the group rides. You start doing these monster rides and things like that. When did the gravel bike happen? About 3 years ago. Okay. I think. Well, back up to 2017 is when I got into mountain biking.
Okay.
I had never had any interest in mountain biking, and I don't know why. I think it was just I just hadn't had any real exposure to it. And a couple of buddies of mine, Jim Lesh and Dan Schmidt, were like, "Hey, come on, we got this annual ride. We want to do it up. We're going to do it up at Poor Farm Park in December. They call it the Pie Ride. Oh, by the way, we're going to do it in the dark."
Okay.
And Jim says, "I've got a mountain bike you can borrow." Well, he's about 8 inches shorter than me, so this was a medium hardtail single speed mountain bike that he put the seat post out about as far as it would go. And we had a couple of cocktails and then put the lights on and went into the woods, and it was a blast, and I loved it. And so a month later I had a mountain bike, and and so that got me into off-road riding. And then with the rise in popularity of gravel and gravel events and gravel bikes, now all of a sudden I was like, well, I probably ought to get a gravel bike too. Yeah. And going into gravel was not as difficult, having wet my feet into mountain biking. Okay. But if I had just gone from road to gravel, I think it would be a little bit harder because, gravel can be loose, gravel can be, kind of unstable. And you need those bike handling skills that mountain biking forces you to have. Yeah. So, I've enjoyed all three disciplines.
Okay. All right. None seems to does one seem to pique your interest more? I mean, you're
it's kind of seasonal with me. I really like the gravel and the mountain biking in the wintertime because you're going slower and you're in the woods and you're protected from the wind. You're going slower, so it's not as cold. I'd go out. You can go out and do a 2 or 3 hour ride on a mountain bike and only go 20 miles. Yeah. But you're never going to get cold.
Right, you're doing so much more work.
You're doing a lot of work. You're generating a lot of heat. But if you go out on the road, you're going to have all that wind, and I would just assume stay away from it in the wintertime. But in the wintertime, you've got sometimes the trails will get wet and they close them. They don't dry as quickly. So then having the gravel bike and all the gravel fire roads out at Pocahontas makes that so you can still go out and ride.
Okay. So it sounds like you're quite content riding year round.
Oh yeah. I had a trainer for a couple of years, and I only used it maybe a dozen times, and I hated it, so I just sold it. And I have no interest in Zwift. Okay. None at all. I'm an outdoor person. I want to be outside.
And that's fine. I don't fault you for not liking Zwift. I already asked you were active before. Why do you keep riding? Why do you keep doing all this?
I mean, this may sound so simplistic, but I just love it. Yeah, I love doing it. So and I think the health benefits are there, certainly. It's an exercise you can do forever. You can do it alone. You can do it in a group. I mean, you can do it so many different ways that you don't have to have a tee time, say with golf. You don't have to have a gym membership. You can just, if the mood strikes you and the weather's fine, you can just put your shoes on and go outside and go for a ride. Okay. And I think it really helps clear your mind sometimes. Like Saturday, for instance, the weather forecast was rain. I think the Centerville ride, a lot of the Rabba rides were canceled. Yeah. And I just went out and did a 3.5 hour solo ride. Yeah. And you do a lot of great thinking while you're on your bike, and it's just very peaceful. I think it helps with the mental health too. Okay, all right. And that's fair. Just you enjoy it. And do you? So you're comfortable doing the solo rides? Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Have you gone to have you done any events? Have you always been able to have friends go with you to big rides and big events, or have you done any big dumb rides solo? Usually there's somebody at an event that I know. Okay. The first time I did Mountains of Misery in 2014, a lot of the people I ride with now were there, but I didn't know them at the time.
Okay.
So I was sort of alone there then. Now there's usually somebody going to an out of town ride.
Okay.
But I would go do one. I would go do one solo. Like we did in 2017. About 7 or 8 of us went up to New York and did Grand Fondo, New York.
Oh, nice.
Which was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And there's 5,000 people on the road, so you're only together for about 30 seconds, and then everybody's wearing the exact same jersey, so you can't find anybody.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you're sort of on your own the whole day, but you're not. You're in this massive group anyway. I mean, it's such a huge ride.
I recall the Grand Fondo, New York. In comparison to, would you do that event again? I think that's
right afterwards, I said I would, but I'd probably put that energy and that that time traveling to it and the expense to just something else that I haven't done before.
Okay.
Because I've done that one before. I've done it now, and I don't know how much different the ride would be. It's the same course every year.
Yeah.
But it is an event that I think if you haven't done it, you should look into it, because it is a lot of fun.
How challenging was it in comparison between Stormy of Thunder Ridge and Mountains of Misery?
It's hard. I mean, it's 100 miles with, they say 8,000 feet of climbing, but it's really closer to 9,000 feet of climbing. And I don't think the route is it's not easy for sure. Mm-hmm. There's 2 or 3 big climbs in it. Part of the challenge is just right off the gun that there's a lot of people, mm-hmm. and they have everybody starting by age group.
Oh, okay.
So professionals and people who qualified above a certain percentage of their age group start up front, mm-hmm. and then after that it's age groups. And if you want to ride together with somebody that you came with, well, then it's the age group of the oldest person in your group. So when we did it, we were starting almost at the back. We were starting in the 60 to 65 group. Or maybe even 65 to 70. I don't know, but we were pretty far back, and Ken Ashworth and I just started picking our way through the field for probably about 2 hours, and it to get a little bit of space.
Yeah, mm-hmm. That's a lot of people. I've looked at that event, and I thought I'd do it, but I have to say, the registration fee,
it's
and of
expensive.
course the hassle of getting up to New York, as you mentioned.
It's expensive, and you got to get up to New York, and you got to park, and you got to the logistics of all that are not the easiest. But there is free parking in Fort Lee, New Jersey, on the day of the race in town. So if you roll into Fort Lee at 5 a.m, you can park on the street. You can park there all day, and then you just ride across the George Washington Bridge, loop around a couple blocks in the upper west side of Manhattan, and then come onto the lower level of the bridge. And but you have to be there so early, because they check your wristband and make sure that you are who you are, because there is prize money for the people at the very front of the race. Yeah. It's a big day. It's a long day. I think I got up at 4:30 in the morning from a friend's house in New Jersey, and we didn't roll off until 7:30 in the morning. So you're sitting on that bridge for about a good hour waiting to start.
Oh man!
And it can be chilly, and it's going to be windy on that bridge. Yeah. So.
And that's in May, right?
It's in May, yes.
Yeah. I did the Fireborough Bike Tour.
New
York. Mm-hmm. Way more chill ride than.
Oh yeah.
And it's only 40 miles, and just the logistics of getting to New York for that. I stayed in Airbnb, and that was a great ride. Josh went up there with me. Josh Owen, fantastic ride. Recommend it for everyone. But I can't imagine doing the Grand Fondo New York kind of.
Well, you're not in the city at all for that race. Okay. For that ride,
because it starts in New York.
Starts on the George Washington Bridge.
But goes into New Jersey. The ride's really in New Jersey, right?
Maybe only the first 5 or 10 miles, and then maybe the last 5 or 10 miles. Okay. You come across the George Washington Bridge and loop down underneath it onto Riverside Drive, which is this road that is kind of a narrow 2-lane road that they closed for this event.
Okay.
And it's hilly, but it's beautiful. You're riding along the road there. But at that point, everybody's really tightly packed together. So you're in a big peloton. And because you're starting by age group, not everybody's riding the same pace. So there's a lot of shuffling back and forth. And then once you get up onto Route 9W, you cross into New York pretty quickly. And then it's up along the Hudson River up to Bear Mountain. And that's the big climb that they advertise. But that's really not the toughest climb in the event. When you climb up Bear Mountain, come right back down Bear Mountain, and then there's a couple of climbs after that really start to test your legs a little bit.
I was aware that because I've looked at this event quite a bit, and I know they try to make sure you know that there are other climbs. It's not just Bear Mountain.
Yeah. Bear Mountain was the easiest of the big climbs on the whole thing.
Okay. All right. We're going to find a New York 50. And there's a 50 option and a 100-mile option.
In the 50 option, you climb up Bear Mountain, descend Bear Mountain, and then they put you on a bus and drive you back.
Oh, okay.
So it's kind of anticlimactic.
Yeah. I think I'd want to finish.
But when you're climbing up, people are coming down. So it's a 2-lane road. You stay to the right of the yellow line. You're going up. And then when you're going down, you stay to the right of the yellow line because there's just this constant stream of people
going
coming
down. Yeah. Speaking of which, not quite speaking of which, have you been in any accidents?
Yes.
Okay. Do you mind talking about any accidents you've been in?
Sure. I mean, I was hit by a car probably 8-9 years ago.
Okay.
Just came off of Grove Avenue, turned on to Libby going towards Patterson, and coming the other way was a car who made a left turn in front of me, didn't see me at all, and I grabbed all the brakes I could, and I hit her passenger side back door and went over the handlebars and bounced off her trunk and into the street, and I didn't get hurt, the bike didn't get hurt, her car door got dented up pretty good, and the police wouldn't write her a ticket. So they chastised me for not having my bike registered in the city of Richmond, which isn't a thing. And I told him, I said, that's not even a requirement. He said, oh, it absolutely is a requirement. And he started lecturing me on that. And so it was kind of a weird experience.
Wait, registering your bike? What?
I didn't think that was a thing. He refused to write the woman a ticket. Absolutely refused. It was two older women who were in the car, and they just didn't see me. And I've had a couple other little falls. I had a mountain bike accident that kind of ended up in the hospital. So that
you recovered.
Yeah, that was my last trip to the Buttermilk Trail.
Okay. Have you tried to get anyone else to ride? Have you encouraged anyone else? Have you converted anyone into cycling?
I don't think so. No, I mean it's either your jam or it's not. And if it's not, then that's fine. I don't want to try to bully somebody into it.
Okay.
I bought my wife a bike about 8 years ago, and she rode it 3 times, and I just finally sold it the other day because I was like, this thing's just sitting here. I might as well sell it. Bikes are moving quickly now, so I'll sell it. But no, I mean, friends of mine, they know I ride, and if they have any interest in it, they'll ask me. And if they don't, I'm not gonna go out there and try to spread the gospel of riding. Either they want to or they don't.
Speaking of spreading the gospel of riding, when you started riding, and you were talking to your friends or family or mentioning this to them, did they seem interested? What was your close friends and family members like? You started doing all this riding. We're like, well, why are you doing this? Or did they this is awesome?
Well, I think some think I'm crazy, or obsessed, or both. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I think everybody just thinks of it now. It's just part of who I am. Yeah. And so I don't think anybody really questions it anymore.
Okay. Just that crazy thing you do.
It's just that crazy thing that I do. I've taken a phone call from a family member, and they're asking me something, and I was like, well, I'm laying in a tent right now out in the woods. In the midst of biking between this city and that city, and so I really can't get to this person right now, but I'll be happy to take care of that maybe next week. So, and that's the latest thing now is the bike touring.
Oh, okay.
A couple years ago, once I got into riding longer distances, I always thought, I'd love to ride to Blacksburg and back.
Okay.
And
that's right. Yeah.
And Dan Schmidt, who you probably have seen now, is the one riding across country with the Kon-Tiki Challenge. He's doing great. He's having the time of his life, and his company is based in Blacksburg, the company he just retired from, and he had told me that he'd ridden back from Blacksburg to Richmond from there before, just in 2 days with a backpack. And so I thought, well, I'll ride to Blacksburg and back. I'll just put a backpack on and do it in 2 days out and 2 days back. And got to Lynchburg, 122 miles, and started to develop a blister on my right foot. And I thought, oh God, if I do 100 miles tomorrow into Blacksburg and this thing gets worse, this is going to be a really awkward phone call home to my wife. So I just turned around and came back the next day.
Yeah.
But I thought, I'm still going to do this. I just got to change my approach. First of all, not wearing a backpack. I hated that thing about 5 minutes in. That was not the smart move. And maybe it doesn't have to be 2 days. Maybe it's 3 days out and 3 days back. And so I did a 3 day out and 3 day back with a touring bike, loaded up with panniers and a tent and everything. And that was great because my daughter was a senior at Virginia Tech, and I wanted to come out, ride out there and just see her. I figured if I'm going to ride out there, I might as well do it while she's still a student.
Yep.
And so I rode out there, got a hotel, spent 2 nights in a hotel, and just one sort of rest day, and then did 3 days back.
Nice.
And had a blast. Loved it.
How did you figure out the route there?
A lot of Google Maps and a lot of ride with GPS. And even with that, you're still going to end up on some road that you couldn't see on Google Street View, and it turns out to be a gravel road, and you didn't know it was a gravel road, but you just, oh well, let's just keep going. Or a road that shows up on a map but doesn't really exist. And you guys got to stop, and thank God for cell phones and Google Maps. You can find your way around it pretty easily. But and quite frankly, that kind of thing, getting lost or having a wrong turn, is sort of part of the excitement it's part of the adventure.
Yeah. How did it feel while you were out there? You were out on a ride. Like, did it all feel, this is awesome, this is the greatest adventure ever? Or just...
part of it's hard. I mean, just like any hard ride you do, sometimes you can almost be miserable. The first 3 days going out there, the first 2 days, half of the time I was riding in the rain, and then the third day it was probably a 15-mile headwind for 80 miles, and it was cold.
Okay.
And the town I had planned on stopping to eat breakfast had a power outage, so all the restaurants were closed, and I had no food. So I go another 10 miles, and the restaurant I had found on Google Maps was closed for the week for spring break. So found an Amish market on the side of the road and managed to get some food. But sort of the unpredictable stuff, you just have to deal with it. But it was. But getting there again, that sense of accomplishment when you roll in is pretty awesome.
And that was was that your first case of like bike packing?
Yeah, sort of that backpack trip was sort of the first taste, although there wasn't much. I was staying in a hotel, and I was really not carrying anything more than just a second kit and a pair of shorts,
Okay.
So, but yeah, that was sort of the first real, bike packing, bike touring kind of experience.
And again, it sounds like you've done more of that, so you didn't hate it.
Did a couple. There were about 6 of us did a trip out of Harrisonburg about almost 2 years ago, where we went up Camp Roosevelt and Wolf Gap and back to Harrisonburg, and that was we had a group of, I think, about 6 or 8 of us.
Okay.
And that was a lot of fun. And then last May of 21. 3 of us, Ken Ashworth and Dan Gerard, and I did the Trans-Virginia Trail from D.C. down to Damascus in 7 days.
Okay.
Which is 540 miles, and I guess about a third of it's gravel, and going through some real out-of-the-way places. And then just a couple weeks ago, we did our Pittsburgh trip on the Gap and the C&O. Pittsburgh to, well, some went as far as Mount Vernon, and then a few of us continued on all the way to Richmond.
Okay.
So we did Pittsburgh to Richmond in 6 days.
And the C&O trails, like crushed gravel or something?
Yeah, the Great Allegheny Passage, the Gap out of Pittsburgh is mainly all gravel.
Okay.
And it like the last 50 miles it's 150 miles, and the last 50 or so is just very slightly uphill to the Continental Divide, like maybe 1% or 0.5%.
Okay.
Sometimes it's almost imperceptible that you're going uphill. And then from the Continental Divide down to the end of the Gap Trail is like 20 miles at like a 2% downhill.
Oh, nice.
But then you hit the C&O Canal Trail, which is just dead flat all the way to Washington.
Yeah.
And that's gravel. Some of it's in better condition than others.
Okay.
But a lot of small towns and, rustic campsites along the side of the trail. And that was a group, we had 9 of us that started out.
Okay. When was the first time you slept outside? Because you all slept outside on that one, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We camped the whole time.
Okay. Yeah. When was the first time you did the actual bike camping?
When I went to Blacksburg.
Okay.
I camped, camped a couple nights, camped 3 nights, spent one night at a warm showers house because there was no campgrounds in the area that were open at the time.
And a warm showers house?
Yeah. So warm showers is this network of people who are willing to take cyclists into their house who are doing touring. And, it's usually people who are like-minded. And there was a couple out near, oh God, I can't remember. It's out near Natural Bridge. And it was just a couple that had this house on a farm, and they just, sure, you want to come out? Sure, no problem. They have a finished basement that opened up out to this beautiful view of the valley, and they're like, here, you can sleep down here. Bathroom, little kitchenette. It was beautiful. We just woke up. I woke up the next morning, there was no power, so none of my stuff had charged, and no food, and so that was the beginning of that adventure.
Does sound like an adventure there. I think I've heard of some versions of that, but it's not heard the warm showers house. So I've not heard that before, so I may have to look into that a bit more. So bike camping has happened. Will continue to happen, correct? You've not put that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to do a week-long trip like that every year.
Okay,
it's great.
Okay, have you done any races?
Not really. I've done some mountain bike races, like the
Monster Cross,
and I did was it RVA 6/13, which is like a 6-hour race or a 12-hour race.
I'm not familiar
with it. They haven't done it in the last 2 years, but it was out at the Boy Scout camp out in Goochland, and you can do it as a solo. You can do it as part of a team, but it's just how many laps of this course can you do in either 6 hours or 12 hours.
And it's mountain bike?
Mountain bike.
Okay.
All single track. So I did I think it was like an 8-mile loop, and I did 5 laps in 6 hours.
Okay.
So that was plenty.
Okay.
That was plenty.
Okay.
That was hard. And and then a couple of gravel events.
Okay.
But not crit racing or anything like that.
Okay.
That doesn't
it doesn't pique your interest.
That doesn't interest me. No, I like watching it. I like talking to people who do it, watching YouTube videos of it, but I have no interest in racing crits.
Okay. All right. That's fair. What you've already talked about some events. I want to ask you a memorable cycling event. What events you really want to go back and do again? Or even like rides you'd like. You've done it before, but you definitely would want to go back and do it again.
I'd want to go back and do again.
Yeah.
I think the Trans-Virginia Trail would be one to do again. Mm-hmm. I would like to give that another shot. Maybe with a different bike and a little bit lighter setup. Mm-hmm. There's some events that I haven't done yet that I still want to do, like the Hincapie Grand Fondo or the Belgian Waffle Ride in Nashville or things like that. Just sort of looking at all the events that are out there pick off one or two a year, instead of just doing the same events over and over again. Pick out some new ones and travel to different places and have a little bit different experience.
Okay.
There's one in my hometown up in New York, had just built a whole bunch of mountain bike trails, and I managed to, during a quick visit up there, ride a little bit of them, and they have a race every year up there that I would love to do, just to be able to ride all those trails.
Okay.
So I might do that.
Okay. Speaking of trips and bikes, do you take your bike with you on your on your vacations?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
If I go to the beach, I bring it. It depends on the vacation. A couple years ago,
Sure.
went on a cruise and couldn't bring it that way.
Probably would have went out well.
And a few years ago, my wife and I and my 3 daughters, we went to Corsica.
Okay.
In France, and I didn't bring the bike, but I rented a bike for 10 days. And
Okay.
And we were there for 2 weeks, and for 10 days I had a Scott Addict, and I just rode those days up in the mountains every day.
Yeah.
And it was absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
And I would do that again in a heartbeat.
Awesome. I think I remember seeing pictures of that trip, I think.
Unbelievable scenery.
Yeah. Okay.
Incredible hills. I mean, don't go to Corsica unless you want to ride hills, because there is not a flat section of road anywhere. But once you get up on the mountains, the area we were in had a flat road, but you had to climb probably 1,500 feet to get to it. And it just ran around the mountain for like 20 miles in each direction.
Yeah. But
once you got to it, you could just go around the mountain and just see some incredible vistas.
Yeah.
Just absolutely beautiful.
Is there anywhere else out of the country you would want to ride?
I definitely want to ride some of the iconic climbs in France.
Okay.
I definitely want to go, do Alpe d'Huez or Ventoux or something like that.
Okay.
And or maybe Italy. I'd love to do some riding in Italy if the chance were ever
Okay.
presented to me.
You got time. So some particulars here. Clearly you do. Not every ride is a monster ride with 90 miles and 9,000 feet of climbing. What do you like to take with you when you're doing the short rides? You're doing the the ABC ride, or what do you like to take with you when you go?
Just a couple of cliff shots and maybe a gel.
Okay.
Just in case.
Okay.
Stop at a store and grab a Snickers bar or something.
Okay.
Nothing fancy.
Okay, so not too particular.
I don't overthink it too much.
What's in your bottles?
Scratch.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does it matter what flavor?
I like the lemon lime.
Really?
Yep.
Oh man. Okay. If I come across any lemon lime, I will spare it, because I do not like lemon lime. Okay. Now, if you're going on, Stormy or Thunder Ridge, one of these bigger colossal rides, like what do you want to take with you then, or is it just more of the same?
Still do a couple bottles of Scratch, and this year I forgot it, so I just they put some stuff in the swag bag, some drink mix, and I tried to mix that up, and it was just awful. So I just dumped it out and rode to the gas station down the road from the start and picked up a couple bottles of Gatorade. I'll just still bring a couple of cliff shots and a couple of SIS gels, and then for Thunder Ridge, their rest stops are so incredibly well stocked.
Fantastic rest stops, yeah.
I could probably get the whole ride without touching anything in my pocket. This year they had boiled potatoes at the top of the climb, which were just phenomenal. So
did they still have the pickle juice?
They had pickles. They had pickle juice. They had everything up there. It was awesome.
That's great. Okay. Use Strava? Use Strava.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
No, if it's not on Strava, it didn't happen.
When did you start using Strava? When did you start feeling like I need to put everything on there?
Pretty soon after I started riding seriously, probably like 2012 maybe.
Okay.
It's been a while.
Okay.
And back then it would seem like you'd go on a ride, and maybe if you were riding with 10 people, maybe 3 of them were on Strava. Now you go on a ride with 10 people and everybody's on Strava.
Yeah. Are you looking at your stats and anything like that? Are you looking at chasing segments or anything like that on Strava?
I'll chase a segment every now and then.
Okay.
If it's one that I think I can get. Then there are just the ones that just just by being on a fast group ride like the Hanover Courthouse ride or Crump Park, that just if you're in a group and it's going fast enough, you know, you might end up with getting into the top 10 or you know, lucky enough to get a KOM. Usually if you get a KOM on a group ride, it's really not all about you. It's the group was going fast and you just happened to be the one who got 1 second faster than the rest of the group. But no, there's a few KOMs in the city that I will you know, put my eye on and just maybe try to get every now and then. Okay.
All right. Yeah, it's always either way, yes, chasing KOMs is great. When you have the time, it fits in with the ride.
Sure, why not?
You know, earliest memory of riding a bike.
Oh God, probably, I don't know, probably
working memory as you can.
Yeah, I mean, you know, probably 5 or 6 on the driveway with my dad, you know, in a you know, bike with training wheels. But yeah, I mean, where I grew up, we were in a valley, and we were about 3 miles from the end of the road where there was a general store, and it was very hilly. It was maybe like a 1/4 mile flat and then just hilly all the way to that store. Yeah. And so as kids, we'd ride, you know, down to that store to get candy in the summertime. And some of the hills we had to walk because they were. It's still. I rode it just a few months ago, and it's. I was back up there for a friend's mother's funeral, and I brought a bike with me, and I hadn't ridden that road since, you know, since I was a teenager. Yeah. I was like, I got to go ride it. And those hills are still hard, but I didn't have to walk anything. Good. But yeah, as kids, we would, you know, we would ride 3 miles to the store on all those hills, get some, you know, chocolate or something, and then ride back. And it was a lot of fun. Nice. It is always interesting to go back and do the things we found challenging when we were children, and then go back as a, you know, fully aware adult and go, you know, particularly in the riding kind of situation, and go back and do some of those roads again. What's something you didn't know the first few months of riding that you wish you had known, kind of thing? What's something like, I wish I'd started that like day one kind of thing, and you, if anything? There's really not one thing. I think it's just a combination of just picking up things over time of how to, you know, how to ride in a group. Well, from the very beginning, I would say probably just knowing how to ride in the group well, because anybody, the first time you ride in a group, you don't realize that, you know, the impact of your movements on the people behind you. So I would say I wish I was more aware of that at the very beginning, because I'm sure I've, you know, made some squirrely moves early on. But, you know, just it's just an acquired skill over time on how to, you know, save your energy, how to get low, stay out of the wind sometimes. I think it's just a skill that you just develop over time, and by watching other people, who are way more experienced than you, right? And just, well, why are they doing that? Oh, okay, now I see. Yeah, that makes sense. I should do that too. I tend to look at what other people are doing sometimes. Well, it makes me think about when I see people grabbing bottles, right, and then they'll hold their bottle. I don't know if you've been in a group ride and never understood that. I have no idea what that means. I imagine it's, and I've not asked the people who've done this already. I imagine it's you're letting the people behind you know you're grabbing. This is what you're doing. You're grabbing your drink from a bottle. And for people who can't see my hand, I am gesturing. If you grab the bottle between your legs and then kind of hold your arm out to the right and kind of show everyone you have the bottle and then drink from it. And I've seen it. I tend not to do it, but I imagine that's what that is. I imagine it's showing everyone else like this is what I'm doing while I'm, kind of. I have no idea what the benefit is of that, because if the person in front of me just reaches down, grabs a bottle and drinks it, I can see it. They're right in front of me. How do I not see it? Although I'm typically not staring too much at the person in front of me, I'm really looking over that person's shoulder at the person in front of them. Yeah, keep track of the group. Because if I'm trying to react off of something the person in front of me is doing, it's too late. But Yeah, I've never understood that. I don't know what that is. I don't do it. But it also, I try not to drink too much if I've got people behind me. I tend to, if you're in a pace line and you're rotating, wait till you start dropping back and you're in the back,
right,
take
a
drink.
safe spot.
That doesn't always work, but sometimes that is what makes the most sense, because if you're gonna take a drink and or go get a gel or something like that, you might get a little squirrely on the bike, and so it's better to just do that when there's nobody behind you.
Yeah, a vastly safer position. I tend to only do that either when I'm on the front, and I can control the pace, or in the back as well.
Mm-hmm.
The thing. How do you feel when you see other people out riding? When you're mowing the lawn and you see a group of cyclists pass by, not to your place, do you feel anything? You're just like, there's people on the bike, or do you like, I need to go get my bike? Where is it? Like, how do you, what's the thought?
Well, I don't have, since I moved into the city, I don't have a lawn anymore, so I don't have to worry about mowing the lawn.
That's great.
But yeah, if I see somebody ride by, sometimes I'm like, I wish I was out there doing that.
Okay. I will.
Or do I know that person?
Yeah.
That's the first thing. Do I know that person? Or, sometimes people think that you're staring at them, but I'm really staring at the bike. What kind of bike is it?
Mm-hmm. Okay. I asked that question because a couple years ago I was helping someone move, and clearly moving is not fun.
No.
And so I think it was the Carytown group, because it was someone that was moving out of Churchill, and I saw them like rolling through Churchill, and like definitely stopped and took a few minutes to just kind of look at them, and it's like, oh man, it's a Saturday, I wish I could go out and go ride with them. And so I wondered if other people, like felt like I should use
Yeah. That if I were helping somebody move on a Saturday, or and I saw that happen, I would feel the same way. Like, oh God, I wish I was out with them.
What's something you'd want to share with someone who was like just getting into or thinking about getting into cycling? What's something you'd want to tell this person? Not even one thing, but like, what would you want to tell some new person thinking about getting into riding?
Don't get hung up on average speed.
Okay.
Try to find a group that rides the same way you want to ride. And if that's slow, great. If that's fast, great. If that's a lot of mountains, okay. If that's not a lot of mountains, fine. But find people who ride the same way.
Okay.
Because you don't want to get into something where you're not comfortable, or where you're not enjoying it. So whether it's long rides, short rides, urban rides, whatever, just find a group when you find a group that's riding the way you want to ride, just keep doing it.
Okay.
And don't be afraid to try something different.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to try a type of riding that you haven't done before, like a mountain bike, like a gravel bike, or like bike camping or something like that.
Okay.
Bike packing. Just don't be afraid to try it.
Any tips for bike packing?
Think of everything you want to bring, and then don't take about 15% of it. Because people bring more stuff than they need. They just do. You just don't need as much stuff as you think you're going to need. Because you're going to be carrying that weight everywhere.
I suppose the thought of like, I'd rather have it and not and feel like I didn't need it. But yeah, right. You've got to take all that with you. It's not like a car. Right? It's not like you're
right.
packing.
You have to carry it all in. The first time I did it, when I went to Blacksburg, I had a 2-man tent I bought at REI, and the thing is like incredibly heavy.
Yeah.
And now I use that just if I go camping aside from cycling.
Yeah.
But I've got a bike packing tent that is very light and very compact and easy to roll up, and know the route that you're going to go, because if you're going to be on a route where you're going to be near a lot of stores and a lot of towns, then don't bring a lot of food. Like when we did the Trans-Virginia Trail, I brought a little cook stove, and I brought a couple of things of food in case we couldn't find anything, and I cooked most of it, but I could have easily eaten out of stores and restaurants the whole way, and not needed to cook anything. And so that would have been, probably 3 pounds of stuff that I didn't need to bring with me. And some of these climbs are long and they're gravel, and, that 3 pounds really, you start to feel it after a while. So I would say just don't bring as much as you think you're going to bring.
Okay. All right. That's fair. Because I think I would probably default on, I would think less about I've got to carry all this with me and how much weight, as opposed to like, I need to make sure I have that in case I don't, in case I need that.
Well, also, if you're going with a group, of, let's say 8 or 9 people, like I just did, not everybody needs the same thing.
Right. Not everybody needs
one person bring something. You don't need 9 cook stoves. Bring 2 or 3 people bring a cook stove and share things, and that way you spread the load around a little bit.
Okay, that makes sense. Yes, bikepacking will happen at some point in time.
It's a lot of fun.
I'm gonna ask you the name of the do you recall what kind of tent that was you take now? The one.
It's a Big Agnes.
Is it just like it sounds? Big Agnes?
If you Google Big Agnes bikepacking tents, they have 2 or 3 different models.
Okay.
And a 2-man tent or a 2-person tent is, when you set it up, you will not understand how 2 people can get into it. So that's what I have as a 2-person model. And believe me, there's not a lot of room in that tent.
So the one you take now is still a 2-person.
It's a 2-person bikepacking
but it
tent.
rolls up very well, right?
It rolls up to a very compact size, but I can't see how 2 people that person's going to have to be a very, very close person to me, and smaller.
Okay. That's also why I asked, because you're of a height, so I thought I'd ask as opposed to getting like a smaller tent somewhere else. Okay. Any random tidbit about your cycling experience that you'd like, you did this thing, you've mentioned quite a bit. Is there any kind of random thing that stands out or that you'd like to mention?
A random thing.
It doesn't have to be completely random, but yeah. Because we talked about the bike packing and the place you've gone, your ride to Blacksburg,
sometimes the best ride is the one that you're really not planning. So, if you're going to do a solo ride on, let's say, a Saturday morning, and for whatever reason you're just going to ride solo, don't worry if you don't have a plan. I rarely have a plan when I go on a solo Saturday ride. I might just start going in a certain direction, and I know the roads out in that area.
Yeah.
And I might ride 40 miles. I might ride 70 miles. Don't be afraid to just go explore someplace you haven't been before, and say, hey, let's turn up this road and see what's up there.
Nice.
You never know what you're going to find. You might find a road that, for whatever reason, all the Richmond cycling groups have not gone up that road, but it could be a beautiful road. So go ahead. Could be a dead end.
Yeah, that's true.
But at least At least now you know it's a dead end. So just don't be afraid to explore things a little bit. That's part of the adventure. And if you're by yourself, you don't have to worry about keeping up with somebody. You don't have to worry about, is the group able to, is the group going to like this? Just, do it if it makes you happy.
Okay. I think that sounds like a theme. Doing it if it makes you happy. Keith, I'd like to thank you for your time and sharing your extensive cycling story and all the events. Is there another bikepacking thing that's already in the plans?
I started thinking about next year's trip on about day 5 of this year's trip. So yeah, I'm sort of mapping out something for next summer.
Okay, all right. I imagine that will also be epic.
And that's half the fun is just planning things like that.
Right? Yeah. I will stay tuned in on that. Maybe I'll potentially attend that and be safer, but more for well-versed bikepacking. But either way, thanks for your time.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Appreciate you participating, that kind of thing. And I expect I will see you out on the road somewhere.
I'm sure I'll probably see you Friday morning.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it'll be on and done. But thank you.
All right.